Well, hi, beautiful souls. I'm Elizabeth, and welcome to Untangling the Heart. This time is for you. So grab your cup of coffee or your tea. I always have mine with me, or whatever brings you a sense of comfort. Sit back, relax, and settle in. As you listen today, just notice what resonates for you. There may be something here that's meant just for you. It's so good to have you here. Today's episode is focusing on what changed when I stopped pushing my feelings away. Have you ever experienced that before? I bet you may have at least once in your life. And I am so honored to introduce you to my guest today, Camille Singleton. Look at her. Isn't she gorgeous? She's an amazing and courageous soul who's gracious enough to share a meaningful part of her journey and how she began to find her way through it. So, Camille, I'm really so grateful you're here today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Elizabeth.
You are more than welcome. We're totally honored. So, share with us a little bit about yourself, if you will.
So I'm Camille Singleton, and I started the Coach Me Camille program, and I help individuals to reconnect with their inner persons. Often our inner voices create this story that we live by, and I understand, we understand that story is shaping our lives, but we want to come out of that. And so I help individuals to come out of that and uncover patterns that are running their lives, help them to rewrite their stories.
That is amazing. Certainly something that we all absolutely need. So let me ask you this question. Why did you start this? Where did this all come from?
Well, I lived a life that it started awfully. I was born with a disease where I had to be in the hospital for the first few years of my life. And if you could just imagine being around people that you don't know, all throughout your childhood as an infant. Um, Once I got home, I was around a family that wasn't expecting a crying baby all the time. And so I really was in abuse and neglect type of situation as a child. And, I learned as I grew older that crying wasn't allowed. We were taught as young people as young children, to live life as just be obedient to whoever's around you. When you have adults taking care of you, do whatever they say. Your parents don't expect that they're there to hurt you, but you grow up with people that hurt you all the time. You just learn to deal with that. That just becomes your life. We don't know that our nervous system creates our life based on that, alone. And as a young adult, that just led me into a life of poor decisions, not understanding who I was.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us. So, when you talk about the nervous system, and I know we're both very aware of that, but do you feel like what you learned as that child, not only from the people around you, but what your nervous system held on to, do you feel like that was your quote unquote truth? That was your truth at the time, and you kind of ran and made decisions based on that?
Honestly, I didn't know what truth was. I had no idea. I just did whatever was being done in the moment as a teenager. I followed whoever, I did whatever, and There was no thought put into anything as a young person. I didn't know who I was. I didn't even know that I needed to know who I was.
Wow. Was there, let's stay with that for a moment. So you didn't even know who you were supposed to be, what you were supposed to be. I love when you said that you made decisions and you lived your life based on just reaction, just on whatever it is. And I love the difference between the word reactive and proactive. Proactive obviously has, and I'm sure you've used this as well, where you have to think about it and take an action intentionally, purposefully, based on what's going on around you, as opposed to what you talked about as reactive and just responding all of the time. So, how did your nervous system feel when you were being reactive and just responding to everything?
Well, the nervous system is very separate from your feelings, right? And so, all I knew is that I was doing these things that I didn't like. I was finding myself in places that I didn't want to be in. And I didn't know how I felt about them in the moment. It wasn't until after things had happened that I realized I didn't like what I was doing. I was making these decisions, but I didn't know I was making these decisions, if that makes any sense. I was just doing. And so what happened was I found myself with a child and still making these decisions and still finding myself in places. I grew to hate myself, literally. I really started hating who I was as a person.
So you also just shared with us that the nervous system, right, is not our emotions. So how did you start tapping, or when did you start tapping into some of your emotions and some feelings and recognizing that there were feelings there that maybe you had just pushed aside and you were running on that old energy of, that reactive, the nervous system of fight or flight all of the time? When did you start noticing emotions, and then what was that like for you?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. It was after I had my first son, and I started questioning why I was putting myself in certain situations. I started asking myself why. That led me to, I had a job, and in the job, they give you these options to talk to someone. So my first time ever sitting before a counselor, or a therapist of some sort, the thing I walked away, I don't remember a lot of that because it were just a few sessions, but the thing I walked away with was the ability to go inside of myself and create a safe space.
Mhm.
you know, and I did that through deep breathing. We actually did a lot of deep breathing together and visualization. And so that became important to me early on before I even understood feelings. That was the first thing that really helped me to connect with inside of me. Yeah. So I was going to say that, you know, I did that for years, but I learned that and used that at points for years. But what happened, I believe it was like that nervous system piece that, kind of came more alive, if that makes any sense, because I started doing worse things. It didn't, it didn't help me do better things, but that's where I started reaching out for drugs. I didn't know, but in trying to deal with what was going on because I had gotten married now and everything started to hurt.
Mm.
Everything was hurting. Like little just back and forth with my husband was painful. Dealing with my child was painful. Everything hurted. And I've never cried so much around this period. And so I learned that drugs was able to kind of take care of that, And so I would have a period where I would use drugs for a while, and then I would stop, and then I would start again, and then I would stop. And I was back and forth for many years, um, doing that. That led me into a rehab, and rehab led me to my second counseling session. It was at this point where I learned that I had delayed feelings.
Mhm.
I never knew nothing about it, but I learned that I would react to a situation weeks after I actually felt them in my body.
Mm.
My body, the nervous system would shut it down immediately because that's what it learned as a baby. But I just was living off of that, if that makes any sense. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. No,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right, is that we create those emotions, and sometimes they're so big we can't deal with them, and like you said, as a baby you shut them down. And that's exactly what we're talking about today is, pushing away feelings, and you didn't even know you were doing it. And a lot of people don't know. Many of us don't know that when there's a feeling that's too big and we push it away, there are lots of ways to push those feelings away. So, do you think that, and you shared about, on again, off again with drugs, do you think that was one of your ways to push your feelings away that you didn't even know you had?
Well, yeah, because here's what happened with the drugs. I felt like there was a point where I would start caring, and I didn't want to care that much. I felt like I was caring too much. And so the drugs would help numb that out.
Mm.
When the feeling of wanting to do better came up, the drugs actually stopped that. And I very specifically did it to stop feeling.
Wow.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense. I can see where we can often get in a situation in our lives where we consciously hadn't had the experience of success of doing something, success of feeling or success of creating something. And then we maybe have had the experience over and over again that we weren't successful. So then we don't believe it. So when you start to have this hope, like you talked about, you start
Mhm.
to feel like you wanted to feel better and you wanted to do those things, and then you probably got to a space where fear kicked in again and shut it down by drug use, or it could be by anything. I mean, we can stop ourselves, we can hit a ceiling and then use some other way to stop being able to grow because we're afraid that we wouldn't be able to do it, or we haven't experienced it before. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, of course, it's not just drugs. There's alcohol, there's sex, there's, just being in a chaotic situation allows that, to us because we're so focused. So changing the focus, those things can help us to, you know, kind of pull that feeling away so that we can focus in on something else. You know, it's interesting because, having the delayed feelings brought me to a place where I needed to understand more about what was really happening.
Mm.
I needed to find out. When I learned that, I started to understand a part of myself I never knew, you know, and so I had to look at reactions. My actions were the piece that helped me to understand the feelings. So when I would do something that was hurtful, I would try to figure out why, and when I learned the situation around it, I started to understand that I had feelings connected to that.
Mhm.
And so piecing it together over years, it took years to really understand it. Um, but piecing it together really helped me to see I was normal. I really was acting from my childhood as a baby. I was reacting from that. All of that had carried up to me, and I'm in my 30s now, at this point, and just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that we can figure out by supporting one another, and there's a lot that we're as you say, we're just not aware of. I mean, I work with people sometimes in their 60s or 70s, and they've been carrying around all of this pain and things that they're not aware of. And what I kind of heard underlying of what you were talking about too was you were learning to become aware of
Mm.
things that you didn't know, and then start to pay attention to that and focus on that rather than focusing on something that helped you to numb or escape what was too big for you in the moment. I mean, I can't imagine there isn't anyone who hasn't felt something at least once in their life where it was too big for them and they didn't know how to resolve it or solve it or get away from it. And so, we tend to either avoid or move out of the way, right? Because we don't have the skills yet. But I heard from you awareness, just starting to become aware of that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so what was one of the hardest parts for you in your shifting from being unaware and shifting from having behaviors that you didn't know what you didn't know at the time? What was the hardest part for you to move from that transition of being unaware to starting to make different decisions for yourself?
Yeah, this is going to anyone listening, this is going to really touch a nerve. But it's the forgiving myself, because it's that point where you start to look at everything you've done wrong. And for me, it was a lot of huge things I've done wrong, and have enough compassion and love, honestly, for yourself to say, I understand I didn't know better at the time. You know, being able to look at that in depth so that I was able to understand why, and be able to walk away from it and be okay with it. You know, that takes a lot of work. It's not just, okay, it's done. No, it takes a lot of work, but it's so possible,
Mm.
you know, um, to be able to forgive yourself and grow from there. I had this thing where, like, life would be so hard in a moment. And I learned that I could change that at any point just by taking a nap, you know? I
Wow.
would take a nap and I can wake up with a whole different mental outset. I don't have to stay there, you know? And that's what I learned. I learned that I didn't have to stay anywhere I didn't want to be. I didn't have to keep anything. I didn't have to hold on to anything. I learned how to let everything go and move forward.
Wow. Camille, that is just incredibly powerful. What a concept. We have a choice and we can create anything we choose. And we don't have to participate. I mean, I'm just mimicking back exactly what you said. We don't have to participate in anything that we choose not to, and we can create something different. And I love that you said take a nap, because there are lots of other ways to do that, which I'm sure you're well aware of too, is get up and take a walk, or you just move and go into a different room, right? It's shifting the energy because that energy is no longer serving you. And I loved that you talked about the forgiveness part. This is really hard for a lot of people
Yes.
because they don't understand what forgiveness is. They think, oh, well, if I forgive somebody, someone did something to me and I forgive them, then it's okay that they did that. No, That's not what it means, right, girl? We're both of us shaking our heads. No.
Not it.
Everybody listen now. That's not what it means. What it means is you're releasing them. It's not okay. You can still set those boundaries. They still don't get to treat you that way, but you're releasing them from holding on to the pain that it caused you based on what they maybe were conscious or unconscious of doing or say. Very often people do and say things where it's not even intentional. They just don't know, right?
Right.
And we take that energy on and then we carry that with us, and there are those emotions that can guide us in those directions. So, with that forgiveness piece, and you forgave yourself, and yes, it takes a lot of work. Did that help you to begin to trust yourself?
I think I had to begin to trust myself before I was able to forgive myself. You know, um, there comes a point where, you know, when you look at what you're doing, you're seeing, it's like seeing red, seeing stop, seeing, there comes a point where you just know that there needs to be a cutoff. The trust comes in when you do something about that. You know, you don't just see it and push it aside. You see it and you do something about it. Now, you may not always know what to do about it, but you learn. You reach out and you learn. You figure it out. Talk to someone, you read. There's so much information out there. And it's not take everything in, it's taking what you need. You got to understand yourself to do that, right? You need to know what is filling you up. And so I had to learn, for me, it was God, it was God, just outright. And that helped me to really get to know myself. And knowing myself helped me to love myself. Loving myself gave me what I needed to trust myself. Now I trust myself.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. What a beautiful step-by-step process that I think everyone can follow if they resonate with that, right? But it was certainly it worked for you. So, what does taking care of yourself today look like? What does that really look like these days for you?
Yeah. I think the number one thing is not be judgmental. I think not be judgmental to myself. I mean, it is so easy to say, oh, you're lazy because you're not doing this, or you don't care enough because you're not behaving this way, you're not doing this. Like, I understand what I need. And when I need time for me, I need time for me. When, when I'm stressed about something, I know just little tricks that help me to get through some stressful moment. And then I know to retreat and, do some reading, do some praying, do some meditating, just to get back to the place where, is my base. That's what I call my base. That's my baseline. Um, I know to stay in touch with myself. So I regularly just close my eyes and, hey, how you feeling in there? I know that when situations come up, I have to do that because my feelings still don't automatically happen. Um, I feel like there are lifelong situations that I work with, and that's one of them is that I have to check in with myself when situations happen, like, my family situations, my children. I could go, that's a whole nother story somewhere
Another
else. But
podcast, right?
yes, yes. But I do little things like take baths. It's weird, but I love warm water. I love water. So I would literally run hot water, warm water somewhere and just close my eyes and just let my hands run under it just for a soothing moment and just taking time out. I do a lot of writing. I love music. So a lot of what I say comes out in my music. And yeah, so those are some things.
I love that. So I clearly have heard today that you shared being aware, not just flying under the radar and trying to either escape or fix temporarily. Being aware. I've also heard forgiveness, letting go. I've also heard shifting in the moment, literally shifting the energy. And it sounds a lot physical too. Like you said, run your hands under the warm water. It's being present in that
Yes.
moment and feel, not just putting your hands under the water, washing your hands quickly, but actually feeling it and just being present at that moment. And for that moment, you don't have to deal with anything. It's not an escape, but it's, wait a minute, I'm here. I'm here. Right. Rather than feeling like you're pulled in a million different directions. So
Right.
I absolutely love that. Shift the energy. Beautiful. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us? One last thing that you can think of that brings you, and of course you talked about God. I'm not forgetting that. But what brings you peace or clarity? What else can you share with us?
I think the last point is about reframing situations, having a different view of things, allowing things not to be just dead on, this is it, there's only one way, but recognizing that there are many ways for things to happen. There are many reasons why people do things, and it isn't always obvious. Sometimes we look and say, I know such and such and such. It's not always obvious. So allowing yourself to open up to other ways of looking at things by reframing things and allowing it to settle in for me, settling it in within who I am, allowing it to align with who I am. So yeah, that would be a good way to leave things.
I love it. So instead of pushing our feelings away, we have that opportunity to create them in any way we choose. Reframe, relook, restructure, renew, refresh, all of that.
Exactly.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, Camille, just how incredible today. I'm so honored to just be here with you. And let me ask you, where can our listeners connect with you?
Well, you can always listen to my music. You can find that anywhere you stream music. Um, you can also find me on coachmecamille.com. I am on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook. I am on Instagram. And you just type in Camille Singleton. You'll find me.
Beautiful. I love it. And we'll find you. We will absolutely find you. And that's amazing. So, I'm so grateful for your openness and your sharing today. I appreciate you so much. Thank you, Camille.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for having me and giving me the privilege and honor to work with you in this way.
No, it's honor all around for all of us. And thank you all for being here today. So, if one person came to mind while you were listening, feel free to share this conversation with them. Maybe I know it'll just shift them, make a difference in their lives. And you can find Untangling the Heart on YouTube, LinkedIn, and wherever you enjoy podcasts. And please be sure to follow and subscribe so you never miss a conversation. Until next time, from my heart to yours.
We've all got stories we don't say out loud, little knots we hide away. You're not broken, you're just learning to be honest with what you feel today. This is Untangled.